Shalom. We are still in Parasha Ha'azinu, and the main theme of this parasha is the Song of Moses. And as I mentioned yesterday, I've got the reference today, it is also mentioned in Revelation 15 verse 3 and 4, where it actually quotes the Song of Moses, and it also connects it with the Song of the Lamb. Now, the Song of the Lamb is not recorded anywhere in Scripture, so there's another thing to that which I don't think we'll have time for in this study to discover that. What I'm busy with this morning and yesterday is to look at the context of Revelation 15, and that is where those who overcame the beast, his image and the number of his name, stand on a sea of glass and they sing the Song of Moses. And they came out of the Great Tribulation, and I believe they also came out of the 7th millennium or the winepress. That's after everything is done. Then the kingdom will come down after that, and then they will receive their reward. So that's the context of this parasha. We also overlay that with the theme of Yom Kippur, which is also referred to as the Day of the Lord, the Day of Judgment, which has to do with the day of fasting and the judgment of the nations. Now, if you think about that, we think, if we follow Yahweh, we won't be judged. Yes, you will. But the judgment in the sense of scales, where you are weighed, and those who have done lots of things within the kingdom in relation to Yahweh's will be called great in the kingdom, and those who didn't teach the commandments and steered away from it and just had the basics of the gospel, they will be called least in the kingdom. So the level of the authority and the accountability or responsibility that will be given to those who will be called the judges or the rulers who will rule over nations, that will be determined by your training, the level of training you received in this life. And the Torah is our handbook, our manual for training the soldiers and the warriors of Yahweh. And I stumbled upon something this morning which is the father of the two sons who are the great warriors that fought under King David, or David, the beloved. So that's also in the context of this parasha, is the great war, the great battle, and the warriors that will be raised up to fight with Mashiach during this time. So that's just a side note on the parasha. So what I'm looking at is the word abomination of desolation and the stopping of the sacrifices, because those are the two signs that will signal the starting point of the reign of the anti-Messiah. That's also the time frame of the prophecies of the two witnesses that will prophesy for 3.5 years. It's also the period where the woman will be taken away in the wilderness with the wings and be looked after for 3.5 years. So all of those things link in with either 42 months, that times and a half time, or 1,260 days, as mentioned in Daniel. So all of those things relate to the last half of the 7-year period called the tribulation, which we already touched on. Now, looking at the word for abomination or desolation, it's the word shamem. The shamem is the letter shin mem mem, and if you insert a yod between the two mems, you get the word shamayim. That means heavens. Now, last week we looked at the kingdom of the north, depicted by the Great Bear, the Great Dipper, the star constellation of I can't remember the Hebrew name of it, but it's the Great Bear, basically. And that is connected to the northern star, which link to the north, which has the meaning to come down in haste and to help. So that's Yahweh's kingdom coming down to help. Who is he helping? He's helping the 7 stars, the 7 churches, the body of Mashiach, and his household. And there's also Orion that depicted the Mashiach, the commander, as well as the reaper, will come and harvest and gather the harvest. And that's what people refer to as the rapture. Now, the harvest and the gathering will only happen at the end of the Great Tribulation. After the Great Tribulation, then he will gather the nations. And so it's not something that we wait for. And I know there's a lot of Christians today, a lot of things on Facebook and in Christian circles, waiting for this rapture to happen that is imminent. I don't want to disappoint them, but it's not going to happen, because we haven't even seen the 2 signs. We haven't even seen the 2 witnesses. And those things need to happen first before the rapture will happen, which is at the end, or the harvest, the gathering. The reaper, the judge, will come and harvest the field, which is the nations. And Shamem and Shamayim is the heavens coming down to the earth. And that causes this great war and the conflict, which I refer to as the great eclipse of the kingdoms of the south and the kingdom of the north overlapping, and that opposition between the 2 forces, like 2 opposing forces, coming into contact with another. And there's a lot of flowing of energy. In this case, it's spiritual conflict or battle in the heavenlies, and that will manifest on the earth as well. The other word is the stopping of the sacrifices, but in Daniel the word sacrifice is in italics. It's just stopping the daily, and that's the word tamid. Now, tamid has got different meanings, and the gematria of tamid is linked to signet and signal, those 2 words. And signet has to do with engraving, and the engraving is found in Exodus, I think it's 28 or 21, where it engraved the names of the tribes on 2 onyx stones that were placed on the shoulders of the high priest. 6 tribes on the one shoulder and 6 tribes on the other shoulder. And shoulder is the word Shechem. That connects Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim to the signet and the sign of the divided house of Yahweh, the house on the mountain of blessing and the house on the mountain of curses, or the house on the mountain of, that's founded upon the foundation of the Torah, and the other mountain is the household that's founded upon the foundation of religion, which is mixed. And that's also in the gematria of Tamid is Dathan, which means 2 wells. And we found that in the story of Joseph, who went to his brothers, and they were at Dathan, where there's 2 wells, the well of the Torah and the well of religion, and they mix man-made traditions with Yahweh's Torah. And that's where the mixing and confusion of Babylon comes from, is through Dathan. And that caused Mount Ebal, or the Mount Curse, to exist, and the division within the house of Yahweh. Now what Yahweh wants to bring the 2 sticks together. You want to bring them into one. And that's where the second part of this word Tamid is found, or the word for signet, and that is the engraving of the 12 names upon 12 stones, which will be placed on the breastplate of the high priest. So now we're looking at the clothing of the high priest in relation to the stopping of something. So what has been stopped? Yes, the sacrifices will be stopped, but also the household of Yahweh will be stopped in their tracks by the opposing force. And what I refer to as this time period of 3.5 years is called the Great Tribulation, but I refer to it now as the Great Test. It's the test for the household of Yahweh. On which mountain will you stand? That's the separation between the sheep and the goats. Are you going to be on Mount Ebal, the Mount of Curse, or are you going to be on Mount Gerizim, where the sword of Yahweh is, the word of Yahweh is, the mountain of blessing? And after the battle, after everything is complete, the household of Yisrael, the 12 stones, will be reunited and placed on the breastplate of the high priest, which is our Mashiach, judge and king. And that is basically the symbolism of what we read here. And that's a fascinating twist in the stopping of the sacrifice, or the theme of the starting and the stopping of the 3.5 years. So that's my little discovery this morning. I just want to share that with you, and I hope you have a wonderful day and be blessed. I'll share some more later this week as I discover a bit more in Scripture. So speak to you soon. Shalom.